Hi, I'm going to be reading from Three Heads of the Well by Carolyn Emerick. And this is a fairy tale that's an old English tale. And I'm going to be doing this in two parts with the fairy tale. And it's definitely for older children. Also, then when I'm done with the story, after the second part, I will also create three other parts that will discuss the first part of the book, which explains a lot about Teutonic fairy tales. Okay, then. The Three Heads of the Well. Long ago, in days of old, even before King Arthur presided over his Knights of the Round Table, in the eastern part of jolly old England, reigned a king who held court in Colchester. At the height of his glorious reign, the king's beloved queen contracted a grave illness and died suddenly, leaving the bereft king alone with their only child, a daughter of 15 years. The young princess was renowned all through the land, not only for her stunning beauty, but also for her gentle and kind spirit. It came to pass that the king fell upon difficult times, and his treasury was near depleted. His advisers told him of a rich noblewoman who had also just only one daughter, and she was a widow. Though she was not pleasant to look upon, in fact, she was a humpbacked with a nose of a pelican bird, and the king was blinded by the shine of her pocketbook. He took the homely woman as his wife and brought her and her daughter to live at the palace. The new queen's daughter had the appearance of jaundice, with a yellow pallor to her skin. Despite the princess's best effort to welcome her new stepmother and stepsister, the two were filled with envy for the beautiful young girl, and their hearts were full of malice. It was not too long before the new queen's envy overtook her. She began to spread false rumors about the princess and made sure that the lies reached the ears of the king himself. The king was loath to believe slander of his daughter, but the reports kept coming in. Eventually, he began to believe that his daughter was as immoral and poorly behaved as the rumors suggested. Miranda by Sir Francis Dicksee. The princess, of course, caught wind of the things being said about her and was aware that she had fallen from the good grace of her father. This became all too overwhelming for the young woman, still mourning the loss of her dear mother. Strolling in the garden one afternoon, she crossed paths with her father. She opened her mouth to address him, but her emotion overwhelmed her and she began to cry. She begged his permission to leave the palace and seek a new life in the wide world. Believing his child to be a lost cause at this point, the king consented to her request. He bade his wife to give his daughter whatever provision she thought would be necessary for her journey. The spiteful old queen gave the princess only an old burlap sack containing just a loaf of brown bread, a hunk of hard cheese, and one bottle of beer. Though this was a pitiful dowry for the daughter of a king, the princess took it with gratitude and started on her journey. The princess made the rounds through the castle to say goodbye to all the servants who had served her well and watched her grow since infancy. The cook and the kitchen maids broke into sobs as they embraced the maiden they had watched grow up. Even the stable master shed a tear to see her go, but go she did. She had to. Young Peasant Girl by Ivanovich. And so she left the castle, through the courtyard. The peasants in the yard stopped and bowed in respect as she walked by. As she walked toward the gates, the guards lifted their arms in salute, and none could believe that their beloved princess was leaving the castle alone, dressed only in a peasant's frock and equipped with a pathetic burlap sack. She walked and she walked, through groves and forests, over hills, and down through the valleys, until at last she came upon a cave beside a brook. Sitting on a large stone at the cave's entrance was an old hermit who greeted her. "Good morrow to you, fair maiden, and whither dost thou journey?" "Good morning to you, sir," the maiden replied. "I travel through the world alone to seek my fortune, whatever it may be." "What dost thou carry in thine burlap sack and bottle?" said the old man. "In my bag I carry provisions, bread and cheese, and my bottle holds a small bit of beer." "Have you breakfasted today? Would you like to share this meal with me?" she asked him. "Why, it happens I am famished," said the hermit. The princess handed over her sack and bottle and bid him to eat his fill. "With all mine heart, I thank thee," cried the old fellow. Here's an illustration uh, by Juliet and the Friar by Sir Francis Dicksee. Not an illustration, a painting. After he had eaten and returned the remainder to her, the old man said, "Dear maiden, as thou sojourn on, thou wilt come upon a thick and thorny hedge, which is impassable. Here, take thee this wand in thine hand. Strike the hedge thrice, and speak aloud, 'Pray, hedge, let me pass,' and it will part and let thee through. A ways further thou wilt come to a well. Within the well dwell 3 golden heads, which will arise from the water and speak to thee. Whatever they shall ask of thee, do it." The princess took the hermit's advice to heart, thanked him for his gift, and set off down the path. She soon found the hedge just as he said, and found that it was indeed impassable. The princess lifted the wand and tapped the hedge firmly 3 times, saying, "Pray, hedge, let me pass." With each strike, just as the kindly old man had predicted, the hedge parted and let her pass through. And so she walked, and soon she came to the well. Weary from her travels, the princess sat down beside the well to rest her tired feet. But no sooner had she sat when a shining golden head rose up through the water. It was the beautiful face of a woman that glittered like gold. The princess was mesmerized by the sight, and then the head began to sing. And here's an illustration by Arthur Rackham, The 3 Heads. Can you imagine? "Wash me, comb me, and lay me down softly. Lay me on a bank to dry, that I may look pretty when somebody passes by." The princess did not hesitate. She reached down, ran her hands through the hair that shone like the sun as it waved through the water. She picked out the leaves and the burrs and twigs that had gotten entangled therein. Gently she lifted the delicate golden head from the water and cradled it lovingly in her own lap. She pulled her own silver comb from her pocket, the only treasure she was able to take with her from the castle, and carefully combed out the snarls until the hair was soft and neat. The princess handled the head with care and softly laid it down to dry upon the primrose bank beside them. No sooner had she done this when a second and then a third head appeared, each singing the same song as the first. And so the princess did the same for each with as much tenderness, did the same for each as she had done for the first. By now she was famished as well as tired, so she sat down again and pulled out her provisions to have her supper. As she ate beside the well, the three heads, now sitting together on the primrose bank, said to each other, "What shall we weird for this damsel who has treated us with such kindness?" The first head said, "I weird her such beauty that she will charm every man who lays his eyes upon her." The second head said, "I weird her a voice so sweet that her song exceeds even the nightingale's." And the third head said, "My gift shall be even greater. I will weird her to be so fortunate that she shall become queen to the greatest prince in all the land." When the princess had finished her meal, and the heads had been dried and warmed by the sun, and were ready to be placed back into their well, as sweetly and tenderly as a mother, the maiden carefully picked them up one by one and placed them gently back in their watery home. With a sincere goodbye, the princess picked up her burlap sack and continued on her way. And so she walked and she walked until she came to the woodland wherein she saw a king hunting with his noble entourage. The princess tried to quietly pass unseen, but the king spotted her from afar and was lured by a strong curiosity. The king turned his horse in her direction and approached her. Immediately struck by her beauty, the likes of which he had never seen on any other woman, and lulled into devotion by the lilting sound of her voice, the king asked her to marry him on the spot. Excuse me. The princess hesitated, but she had endured so much heartache in her short life, and was ever so weary from her wanderings. She looked into the eyes of this king and saw that he was sincere, and that he loved her truly and would treat her well. And so the maiden consented to marry this king whom she had only just met. Illustration by Gustaff Tenggren. Tenggren. The king swelled with happiness at her consent and brought her home to his castle, where they were married the very next day. When the king discovered that his new bride was none other than the daughter of the king of Colchester, he ordered that carriages and retinue be prepared so that he may pay respects to his new father-in-law. The carriage that held himself and his new queen was plated in gold and bedecked with the most precious gems. And so when they approached the castle in Colchester, the old king was astonished by the sight of their entourage. When the old king realized that this glorious young queen was his own daughter, he was astonished. She and the young king told the story of her journeyings and how they came to meet, and how they came to meet to her father and his court. The entire castle was abuzz with a warm feeling of joy for their beloved princess, good fortune. That is all except for the old ugly queen and her hideous club-footed daughter, who were seething with jealousy. Nevertheless, the whole castle rejoiced with a great feast and dancing that continued for several days. When the festivities ended, the old king gifted his daughter with the dowry befitting her status, and she and her husband returned to their own home. There they go in the gilded carriage. That's the end of part 1. I'll return soon with part 2. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you're doing well.